Good morning, Vin. Well, good afternoon for you.
Yes, how are you, Tom?
Yeah, good to catch up with you, man. So,
Yeah.
the way that I came across your content was I was searching for content specifically about geo arbitrage in Vietnam. And the vast majority of the content that I'd come across was, 20-year-old white people that had flown into Vietnam and that they're spending like a couple of weeks or a couple of months there. But I hadn't found anyone with actual Vietnamese roots that had decided to go to Vietnam and settle down there for a chapter until I came across your material, your book, and then some of your videos. For the listeners, do you want to describe a little bit about your background, your corporate background, and how you found yourself in Vietnam?
Sure. So I'm Vietnamese American from Minnesota, and that's where our family immigrated to. And my formative years was growing up in Mankato, southern Minnesota, and going to school, and then all the way up through college, and then working in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and pretty much lived a normal American lifestyle in terms of getting a job, and then working the 9 to 5. And then around that time, my parents purchased or moved to a new location to Florida. So that's kind of where my new
Nice.
home is now, so to speak. So I've been going back and forth. And then, uh, so I have, you know, growing up or living in Florida, that's part of my experience too. But then around 2015, when I was working in the Twin Cities, I actually lost my job, and it made me think long term and what I wanted to do. Like, do I want to keep on doing the corporate work or find an alternative? And that's when I started to search online and on YouTube and podcasts. Those were the probably two big different big two big differences uh, and influences in my life is doing that. And I came across a guy named Johnny FD.
Hmm.
He's a digital nomad, and he talked about Chiang Mai, Thailand, living overseas in Southeast Asia. And he had all these videos about living and traveling in Southeast Asia, and it's really grabbed my attention. And then I figured I would start to maybe do my own business on the side. So at that time, Amazon FBA was a big deal, getting product from different countries, maybe China. And I started to do that. And then I filled my basement full of Vietnam products and started selling online. It took a while before I got some traction, and then people were talking about something called drop shipping.
Dropshipping, yeah.
So yeah, starting an e-commerce business, and kind of opening your own store, working with importers or manufacturers, and then selling heavy, big ticket items. You know, it could be big fans, it could be a gun case, could be maybe $900, $500, a few $1,000 items. And so that was I thought maybe I could try that out before I go back to the corporate world, because I was kind of getting sick of it. It's the same thing, monotonous. And then so I went down that route. I started to listen to more podcasts, and then started to get my side hustle working. And then it just hit me that at the time, I think I was maybe early 40s, maybe 41, 42. And I'm like, man, I'm not getting any younger. I'm not married.
Yep.
And I've always wanted to work in Asia or Vietnam and explore. And if I don't do it
Mm.
now, I'll never do it. And what's next is getting the house and getting bogged down in payments. And so I said, and then I started to continue to listen to Johnny FD and all these other influencers. And then I said, I got nothing to lose. I can always go back to America. And so I sold everything and figured to get a
Wow.
runway. Yeah. And then I figured, I got to be all in. And then, so there's, I think, three reasons for me to go. One was to build my online businesses. Two, to network and find other suppliers. So I was thinking long term, more in the future. And then three, find a significant other. That was kind of part of the bargain. Um, I had dated in the United States. Wasn't really going anywhere. Didn't find any satisfaction.
Hmm.
So I figured, maybe throw myself in Vietnam, Southeast Asia. Maybe some things will happen. So those are the three main reasons to go.
Some really good reasons. Up
Yeah.
until that point, had you visited Vietnam on a holiday before?
Yeah, I think I've been through Vietnam a couple times prior to that. One thing that makes me a little bit different is I've always been interested in Asia, but China, I did that for my graduate studies.
Oh yeah.
So I already had an interest in China. And then after college, I actually went to China for a couple of years to teach English.
Oh wow.
So I
Okay.
had that background. So I'd always stop um, into Vietnam, maybe a week or two, just on a quick, trip. Didn't think too much about it, just to get away from China, see how things were going in Vietnam. I never thought about working in Vietnam because at the time, it seems like being an English teacher wasn't paying so much in Vietnam, so I didn't know how
Mm,
to survive and then pay off my bills if I, was going to do that route. So then I never looked seriously at Vietnam, just maybe a holiday for 2 weeks. Um, but the more I traveled there, the more I liked it. It's very hospitable. I was connecting with my roots, and it was easy to travel. And then it seemed, and then later on, when Vietnam started to kick in terms of the economic engine and
mm,
opportunity, then I started to see things more opportunity and make the connection and then make a jump.
gotcha. So you decided to land in Vietnam. Tell me about the process of settling in. What was that like?
Um, it wasn't too bad. Let's see. I in 2017 I sold everything and I got a one-way ticket. And I wanted to, even though I
One way
wanted to,
ticket.
well, yes,
One way
even though I
ticket.
wanted to
Wow.
uh, live in Vietnam, I wanted to go to Thailand and learn from some of those digital nomads, people making money online, and kind of grow with them. So that was the whole idea: spend time in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So I did that for 6 months. I worked at a co-working space, networking, going to events, and so that was fun. Did a lot of side trips on the weekends, and just whole living was really good. I don't know if you've been to Chiang Mai, Thailand, but the pricing is very, very low. We're talking maybe $1,000 US to live all in terms of
Wow.
rent. Oh man, you could find a $300 apartment that has everything. Has maid service, has an elevator, an adequate room, like one bedroom, maybe a small kitchen, or microwave or something like that.
Hmm.
Kind of like a hotel, but very adequate, very clean,
Hmm.
comfortable. So that's very cheap. And then eating out, as you know, the restaurants there are dirt cheap. You can eat
Hmm.
for $2, $4, $5 per meal. So you really don't have to cook for yourself. So that was the whole idea, is to um, leverage local services um, and rent, food, all the while when you're building your businesses.
Chiang Mai is definitely on the bucket list. I have been to other parts of Thailand, but Chiang Mai, I haven't as yet. Okay, so you went there, found a digital nomad community to try and teach you the ropes, and then from there
Yes.
you then moved to Vietnam. Is that right?
Yeah. So after 6 months there, I actually attended something called Nomad Summit,
Okay.
and it's organized by Johnny FD. He was kind of the guy that influenced me. He's uh, Asian American from California. He made his money and fame through drop shipping,
Yep.
and he did that. Started to teach the course, started to point people in that direction, and then I actually became friends with him, and then joined his boot camp.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that was part of the idea, is just to go to those events and the conferences, and then learn from all of these people that were making businesses, making money online.
Awesome.
Yeah, right.
And so after 6 months, you landed in Vietnam. Was it difficult to settle down, plant roots, find a place?
Yeah. So at that time, again, like I had long term plans to go to Vietnam. Then I always thought Saigon might be too big, too intimidating,
Yep. It's
and
very
so I thought
busy.
maybe, yeah, I thought it might be a little bit overwhelming. I'm gonna turn my camera again here. All right, that might be better. Okay, so um, so Saigon was kind of more intimidating. I thought, man, I don't want to get lost in a big city.
Mm.
Might be overwhelming for me. So then I started to do more research, and then Da Nang kept on popping up, and that's where my parents came from.
Oh, okay.
So I've got family from Da Nang. They talked about how it's a beach city, it's
Yep.
very livable, it's even cheaper than Saigon, and I thought maybe that's the place to go next. And so then I think it was February of 2018,
Hmm.
I set up and found an apartment, and it was quite easy in the beginning. I would go through Airbnb just to find temporary housing, a
Hmm.
couple of weeks or a month at a time. And again, it's very, very affordable. A lot of the times, there are families that rent out their spare bedroom upstairs, and so you have access to a whole floor by yourself. And
Hmm.
these are nice and adequate buildings, and so that was very cheap, very affordable. I started to do that until I got long term housing. I think it was maybe $320 for a month. So I paid for the whole year right on the spot because it was so cheap
Wow.
for me. And so I
Wow.
said, I'm gonna lock in for a whole year, pay the $3,000, and then call that home. And
What
then,
did,
yeah,
what did you get for the 320 per month? What was it like?
that was a little bit more smaller apartment. It was in the downtown area. Um, so I didn't want to live with all the foreign expats. So I guess
Okay.
there's pros and cons both ways, but I really wanted to focus on my businesses
Hmm.
and maybe meet locals. I didn't want to like live in a bubble. If I lived with all these foreigners and Americans, it'd be just like living in America. So I'm like, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then, so I found a nice neighborhood, quiet, had cafes near me,
Hmm.
and very livable. And I could walk everywhere. I could walk to the main river district, that area, maybe 10-15 minute walk. And then I also am a big cyclist or a road biker. So I rode my bike every
Brave.
other day.
Very brave.
So along the beach and the mountains of Da Nang. So I took that up maybe 3 times a
Wow.
week. So that was one of my passions, something I could indulge in and do.
How
And
did
so
you
I
find
really,
Vietnamese? How did you find navigating Vietnamese traffic?
Da Nang isn't too bad. I guess when you go into Saigon, that's another story.
Yep.
The roads aren't really made for cyclists, but I still, tried because everything is a motor scooter. And then I guess if you're on a bicycle, it's almost the same thing, So
Gotcha. In Da Nang, I
um,
know they've got that really long beach. Is there kind of like a pedestrian boardwalk that runs along the beach?
yes, there is. It's very beautiful. It's developing very nicely. Lots of hotels there, and
Yep.
then like the boardwalk you mentioned, beautiful beaches. And during the early mornings, it's very popular with locals. You see them
Hmm.
taking walks, playing volleyball. And then near there, Antung is the foreign expat neighborhood, maybe 6 blocks long.
Yep.
And there you'll find all the foreign expats coming through, living there, based there for months and years. And you'll find the restaurants and bar scenes catering to them, to the Koreans, Chinese, Westerners.
Gotcha. And did you find that in that area everything was a little bit more expensive than the rest of the city?
Yeah, generally speaking, Western food is a little bit more expensive than
Yep.
local food. Yeah, so I'd say that that is true. Could be double than the local price, but then you're getting maybe like a cheeseburger, fries, and a beer for $6, $7, $8, versus you could get banh mi sandwich for $1 or less. So the
I
big
miss those banh
differences.
mi sandwiches. They were so good. My
Yeah,
biggest worry with going to Vietnam is I'm gonna put on a lot of weight because I love the food.
yeah, that's true. Because Vietnamese, we eat so many times of the day,
Yeah.
snacks, desserts. And I don't know if you've been back to Vietnam lately, but they have something called Grab, Grab, Grab app.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, so that's one way you
You
can
get
get around by
delivered.
Grab, and then the food is the delivery. Yeah, so either early morning or any time of the day, late at night, if you're at your hotel,
Yeah,
by the touch of a button, you can get your fast food if you wanted, your Western food to Vietnamese food delivered at your doorsteps for just maybe a dollar or two extra for
dangerous.
service.
That's very
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah, exactly.
So you landed in Da Nang, you found some roots, you deliberately avoided the expat area. What was it like, the process of assimilating into the culture and becoming a local?
I don't think you ever become a local,
Yeah,
especially even though I'm Vietnamese, but I'm more American. I was born in the U.S., so I have
yep.
the Vietnamese American aspect of me. So just my language barrier. I'd go to the markets and they'd be friendly, kind to me. Um, but I was always seen as an outsider, a visitor, so to speak.
Did you speak
Uh,
Vietnamese a little bit?
I do speak it. It has an accent. It's not the greatest, but they could tell, or they just assume I'm Chinese or
Ah,
Korean. They just think I'm just someone different. So
yep.
so
Well, that's good. Like one of
Mhm.
the things that I struggle with is when I go back, like they automatically speak to me in Vietnamese, and I've
Oh,
probably got the vocabulary of a 7-year-old, so I can like order some food, ask where the bathroom is, then haggle, but that's about it. I could have a deep conversation with someone in Vietnamese.
yeah, we're about the same then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because given the fact that you were born in America, like you're completely immersed into it, the English language.
Yeah, right. And then, like you said, I could, get the basics asks. But then when you get deep discussion, if we're talking about philosophy or religion or,
Yeah.
go, further than that, or then I'm lost. I don't have the vocabulary, and I
Yeah.
don't have the education to speak in those terms. So it's really basics of what I can speak. Yeah. So that was Da Nang, and I enjoyed it for a year. Uh, just kind of focusing on myself, self development, and then my cycling, and then working on my businesses, and then dating here and there a little bit, and
Oh yeah.
then I went online. I did the I don't know what it was in terms of the app, but yeah, I met a few locals. Um, I think yeah, just to find companionship, that was always important.
How
So
did you find the differences in dating in America versus somewhere like Vietnam?
gosh, good question. It's hard to say. It's hard to stereotype because most people say Vietnamese would be more traditional.
Yep.
And yeah, so I think that could be it, but it really depends on who you meet. Um, yeah, it was hard. It's really hard to put a finger on it. Many people say that Vietnamese are more serious and they're more marriage oriented, and I guess that could be true.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, it really depends on who you meet and then who you date. But I would say it's easier to meet just because of the demographics and the numbers.
Yes. It's
Uh,
more
you
people.
know, yeah, exactly. More young people, more women.
Yeah.
And so, whereas in America or in the West, if you're looking for Vietnamese background, that's going to be
Hmm.
pretty rare. There are going to be 100 guys going for the one female,
Yep.
in town. And so that's really difficult. And then I dated Caucasians. I have a lot of American friends, and I've dated a few, but then mostly they're thinking long when they think of long-term marriage, they're thinking of the white guy, and they have the dream of marrying, and they don't have a dream of marrying like the Asian guy. So you're not really on their radar. Yeah, they think
Yeah.
of you as a good friend, you're kind, and I've gone to school with them, but to settle down, they're not really thinking that unless you're very close to someone. So
Gotcha.
that was a struggle through college, high school, college of finding, just because it's demographics, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And then when you put yourself in Asia, especially in Vietnam, then it's flipped. You have so many women, young women available. There's a lack of men, and then boom, you're already meeting beautiful women, and they're outgoing. Yeah, you can, if you change your environment, it really makes a difference.
And did you find that being an expat and digital nomad was it an advantage or disadvantage for you?
In terms of when I met other women or
Yeah.
people in general, um, yeah, good point. I guess most locals don't know what I was doing or what a digital nomad is or how you make money.
Yeah.
Most want to know, like, are you an engineer? Are you a computer scientist, or what are you doing for work?
Yes.
So that's the only thing I would register. Yeah. So I think some people were skeptical of, like, what is this guy doing here long term, and just kind of living on his own, working on a laptop in a cafe, not having a quote unquote real job.
Sure.
So yeah. So a lot of people don't really understand that aspect.
Yep.
Sure.
And were you dating? How long were you dating before you found the one?
So I dated someone there for a good 6 months, and it wasn't really going anywhere. I think we had some issues in terms of outlook, religion,
Hmm.
um, and then just the whole, you either excited about someone or you aren't. So if dating someone and it doesn't get to the excitement factor, then you kind of grow apart and move
Mm.
on. So that's kind of what happened there. So then after a year of living in Da Nang, I felt it was a little bit too small
Yep.
in terms of opportunities. It's a great place to go for vacation, short term, a month, whatever. But long-term living, I always felt kind of maybe limited. So then I started to reach out to my Saigon friends, and then went on there a couple trips there, and then I had a great time.
Yep.
Great nightlife, so much going on, more cosmopolitan, more Westerners, more
Mm-hmm.
international. And I'm like, yeah, big city life. This is kind of what I want. And so 2019, I made the move and ended
Oh,
up
nice.
living in Saigon.
And did you find that by 2019, you've kind of acclimatized to Vietnam a little bit? Saigon wasn't as intimidating as you thought?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, the once I get more situated, found the neighborhood, got to know to get around, made my rounds at events.
Mm-hmm.
Then I could grasp how more livable it is and make my mark. And
Yep.
so, yeah, so I guess after getting a little bit of a grip there, I settled in and became more comfortable after some time.
Awesome. Tell me about the process of you settling roots in Saigon, like finding a place, choosing a good neighborhood. Like, tell me about that process.
Yeah, so same thing. When I go in there, I always get an Airbnb, and then I
Good
don't
tip.
want to live exactly in the city center.
Mm.
Kind of want to live a little bit further away, maybe 10 or 15-minute motor scooter, where it's a little bit quieter, or it might be a little bit cheaper. And so I got an Airbnb, and I had this. He's Vietnamese French who owned the building, and I think there was maybe 6 or 8 units, and I really liked it. It wasn't too far away from the city center, and around the area had a main road with a lot of eateries and entertainment. So I figured, I could just go here, get my food and shopping, and I wouldn't have to commute so much. And it was very livable. And there's a market in the back alley.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and then I liked the owner of the building, the landlord. We got along
Hmm.
really well. So then I asked him, I was like, hey, do you have long-term living for the next 6 months? If I could stay here, would that be possible? And so then we worked something out.
Oh, nice. And how did you
Yeah.
find the cost of living compared to Da Nang? Because 320 in Da Nang's hard to beat.
Yes. So pricing at that time was a little bit more. So I think the apartment was going for maybe 450, 500 US dollars a month.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so considerably more, and but definitely not as much as in the West, as you know.
Yep.
And so I would say that Da Nang is about 20% cheaper
Okay.
than living in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City. So I would say if you can afford the bare minimum, I would say 1,000 US dollars. That means you're not really going out.
Hmm.
Everything's covered, but you're not hanging out at the bar so much. You're just getting the bare minimum. You're cooking most of your meals at home. But if you can afford and jump to 1,500 as a single person, all
Yep.
in, we're talking a few eating meals out a few times a week, hang out with your buddies at the bar a couple times, and all of your transportation, food, all of that is covered, and even maybe going on a side trip nearby out of town once a month. You could probably do it for 1,500. Um, so that would say that would be the budget.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's that's
And then
that's
on top of that,
incredible.
as you know, like most hotels there, they have something called a serviced hotel. So you get your laundry done, or your cleaning done by maybe once or twice a week.
No way.
So that's taken care of. You don't have to lift a finger. They
Yep.
change your sheets. It really depends on the building. So if you go to like a more expat friendly area, such as Tao Dien, which is
Yeah.
about 20 minutes outside, it's like a suburb where all the foreigners live.
Yep.
So if you get a building there, it might rent might be a little bit higher. It might be $700, $8 a month to get a decent bedroom with air conditioner, with a flat screen TV. There could be a workout gym on the roof. Um, Parking for your motor scooter on the first floor or the basement.
Yep.
And so that would be, in a regular, a livable apartment, has a kitchen, a regular refrigerator, and then maybe a modern bathroom for about 700, $800. And then, you know, so it's unlike the West, we don't have the car payments. the
Mm,
mortgage, the car insurance, the
yeah.
gas, all that adds up. When I come back to America now, that's what I'm faced with. It's kind of sticker shock. Where in Vietnam it's just like everything's covered, and
Yeah.
I got extra money in the bank, and I'm going
Yes.
out every week, and I'm drinking every other night. I'm having good food delivered to me, people taking care of my apartment. Life's good. That's why my wife really misses Vietnam and is always complaining how expensive
Expensive
it
everything
is.
is.
Yeah, it's in America.
So with that in mind, and you wrote that book about geo arbitrage. You lived there for 5 years, and the cost of living in Vietnam, as you just described, is really, really low. Can you talk me through the thought process of, the deciding to go back to the States?
Yeah, so Vietnam was just a short-term chapter. I just wanted to go for a few years.
Hmm.
There's reasons to go for both business, personal, and I like I said, I wanted to meet someone and marry someone, and I eventually did.
Yep.
And now we have a 2-year-old daughter, and then work on my e-commerce businesses. And then the other thing was to connect with suppliers because I know that's kind of my industry, and I was exposed to that, and I knew Vietnam was on the rise in terms of
Mm,
manufacturing and exports, and so I really wanted to build those relationships with those manufacturers, and so I did that. I was able to do that too. So that was, excuse me, part of the reason for going there. And then you mentioned transitioning back to the United States. So
yeah.
the long term plan was well, since we have a baby daughter now, for education is important. So finding more stability, and then being closer to my parents, and then establish ourselves in the United States, and then maybe in the future have another foot in Vietnam. But at the moment, the whole idea was to get back to the States, establish ourselves, and raise our daughter. So that was kind of the whole idea.
Gotcha. Was a big part of that decision to come back to America because of your daughter?
Yeah, I would say that's a big part. It never crossed my mind to raise her overseas
Yep.
in Vietnam. One, because of the exorbitant tuition fees for private schools.
Hmm.
I've always knew that was very expensive. And then it didn't cross my mind. I think I was just so focused. We were, my wife and I, just going back to the US,
Hmm.
starting our businesses, getting established, spent time with my parents, that raising our daughter here. And then if and when there was an opportunity, then we could probably go back to Vietnam maybe a few times during the year, or spend, maybe later on if we have an apartment there, or more a more established place there, then maybe yes, that we could start thinking about 6 months in the US, 6 months in Vietnam. So that's a possibility down the road, but we have to do one thing at a time first.
Yeah. I really like the way that you describe that phase of your life as a chapter because you see so many YouTube videos of people who are like, living their best life and they're young, they're in their 20s, but you're not in your 20s for the rest of your life or your 30s for the rest of your life. At some stage, you have to grow up, be an adult, settle down, have a family, and it's hard to maintain that sort of lifestyle when you've got a family in tow. So that word you used to describe chapter was really resonated with me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah, the most, like you said, most digital nomads kind of living up the life in Southeast Asia and Vietnam. They're in their 20s and 30s, so they're doing all these videos on food and how cheap things are, and they're having a great time partying it up. But you're right, like people our age kind of eventually settle down. You have to build our lives and maybe careers at that too. So that's another aspect, thinking long term,
Mm,
and then making the decisions best suited for your age at the time.
awesome. So where now for you? What's the next move?
So I'm going to be based in Florida for the time being. My parents live not too far from us.
Nice.
So Vicky is now 2 years old. She's in daycare. So she has a couple more years before she heads into kindergarten and that age. And then I'm working now in supply chain, trade compliance. And then the whole idea is to be an importer. So I hope to make that transition,
Hmm.
and I'm working on it. And I'm also producing more content. And I'm trying to release some video courses coming up, maybe in 2025. But the whole idea is to be based here for the time being, and then hopefully get some traction with the business, and then hopefully maybe within 2 years or something like that, that time frame, I can shift to my own business. And the dream would be to run, a one-person $1 million importing business, traveling the world. So that would be,
That's a great
uh,
plan.
yeah, that
That
would
sounds like
be
an amazing plan.
that would be the
Uh,
dream.
the dream is like earning in euros or US dollars or Australian dollars or some strong Western currency and being able to shift your cost base somewhere, anywhere that you want. It might be Thailand. I know you like Thailand. Might be Vietnam. It might be China. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. So it, when you were looking at China, Thailand, and Vietnam, had you looked at or considered other countries at all?
Um, I don't think so. At that time, I was focused on connecting with my roots. So Vietnam was definitely up there. A lot of people go to Thailand, which I had a fun time there too. But
Yeah.
the whole idea is I wanted to be more based in Vietnam for the reasons I gave earlier. Um, Maybe if I were younger, I would try Eastern Europe. A lot of people go to the Baltic states.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go to the Ukraine
Yes.
or other places. And so those places sound very appealing.
Hmm.
But again, if I were in my 20s and unmarried and no family, I might have, moved there and then to start the next chapter. But,
Yeah.
that's nothing we can choose at this time in our
Yeah. You got to
lives.
play
So,
the chapter you're in.
yeah, right. Maybe if I were to do well in business and I had that opportunity, yeah, maybe bring my family over to Europe or some other places to check out long term. Maybe that is still a possibility.
Awesome. Fantastic. Now, when I post this on YouTube, I'll put the some links in the description of where people can find you. But is there anywhere in particular you'd like to direct people who are interested in more of your content?
Sure. The easiest way is I have a website called internationalvin.com. So that's kind of my main landing page. You can read a little bit about me. I talk about supply chain, import, export, trade compliance, that type of thing. So if you're interested, you can find content there. I also write about Vietnam, China, the global economy, international business. So I write a lot about those articles on LinkedIn, so you can
Hmm.
connect with me there too, and then find my articles. Otherwise, I do have a podcast called International Vin. Again, I talk about kind of international business related themes, entrepreneurship, and then my YouTube channel is Vin Ho, which you can check out too.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate the chat.
You bet, Tom. Really, really good time to be here with you.
Cheers.